The collapse of the Soviet Union opened extraordinary opportunities for investment across Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. Starting in 1993, NCH was among the very first Western investors in the region. Since then, we have been guided by one simple premise.
If you invest in those pockets of opportunity where the capital shortage is at its most severe and therefore at deep discounts, then not everything needs to go right, even most of the time, in order to make money. 5 years ago, a natural extension of that approach led us to see the vast potential in agriculture here in Ukraine and in Russia, countries with centuries of rich tradition in farming.
The idea was simple. Take thousands of small, highly fragmented plots of fallow or mismanaged farmland with some of the richest black soil on Earth, aggregate them into very large, economically viable farming units, and apply much-needed capital and world-class sustainable farming practices on a large scale. Repeat over and over, diversify geographically across the region to reduce weather and other risks, and turn these newly reconstituted farms into what this region was once known as, one of the greatest breadbaskets to the world.
It all began right here. I'm standing on our very first farm in Telelinci, in the Vinnytsia region of western Ukraine.
When we got here, this land, while blessed with some of the best soil on Earth, was not viable for modern farming. Much of it was fallow. Some of it was just growing subsistence crops.
This plot was only 2.7 hectares in size. The small plot next to it was owned by someone else.
All the other farmland around us was held in highly fragmented ownership, dotted with rundown buildings, insufficient storage capacity, and antiquated equipment. Unemployment was high, and workers who had work could not necessarily rely on a stable income. We arrived here in 2006. What we saw convinced us that the capital shortage in the agribusiness sector, which continues to prevail today, presented us with an opportunity of historic proportions. This very spot I'm standing on was once just its own little 2.7 hectare plot. Our first step was to aggregate thousands of small farms like this one into a farming unit large enough to justify industrial scale.
I think really the scale of the operation that we found ourselves in and how we managed to put all the logistics into place to organize the renting of the land, to organize the farming business with management, with equipment, with crop planning, and all that happened in a very short space of time. And really, I think it was a terrific achievement to watch and to be part of.
After an arduous 18-month-long process, fraught with countless frustrating starts and stops, we hit our target.
From that one small plot, we assembled 4,204 contiguous plots, together comprising 11,379 hectares with 10 to 20-year leases. Each transaction required undergoing a cumbersome registration process of a lease agreement. This first farm assemblage alone required over 63,000 pages of documentation. We brought in state-of-the-art American and German equipment, installed a hand-picked local farm director, and supported a management team and a workforce eager to be part of this enormous transformation.
So began the first farming cycle here at Telelinci 5 years ago, and the rehabilitation of this rich land back into one of the most productive natural resources on Earth.
The team on site at the farm developed and managed our operating plan, analyzing past crop cycles, specifying crop rotation, mitigating weather and other risks, and setting operating objectives. From our offices to our fields, these modern, environmentally sustainable farming practices accelerated production at this farm by 50% over its first 5 years of operation, increasing grain and oilseed yields by 2 tons per hectare.
And our impact on the local community here has been just as transformative. Hundreds of local workers are now benefiting from a yearly salary, a pension, incentives, and most rewarding of all, a new optimism.
We're cognizant of our responsibilities to all of our stakeholders, and this new farm has set in motion economic drivers that will serve the land, this region, and its people for decades to come. And eventually, we will pass on this now cash-generating, well-managed operation to the next owner and to the next generation of local workers. This is not a single success story. It's the first of 70 stories in Ukraine and 20 in Russia, together comprising over 700,000 hectares of highly productive farmland and farming operations that we started from scratch.
All thanks to the sound, replicable model that we first tested and implemented right here.
And over the next 10 to 15 years, we will continue our program of farmland acquisition, and will also seize other opportunities along the agribusiness value chain where capital shortages present themselves. It's what NCH has been doing for over 18 years in this region, buying undervalued assets, managing them to add value, and preparing them for profitable exits.
Financial success is our goal, but we take equal pride in the legacy being created by the forward-thinking investors who provided us the means through which this historic journey could begin.